Have you ever been in another country and felt invisible or like people were being rude to you? Have you ever wondered where the most, let's say, impolite people live? Today we're going to look at a ranking that's sure to be controversial and interesting, the top 15 most impolite countries in the world. Curious to know if your country made the list? Then stick around for the rest of the video. In 15th place, we begin our list with the United States of America. Despite the widespread belief about Americans being friendly, some might find their behavior a bit pushy. In the United States, customer service culture is deeply rooted. Everything has to be fast, efficient, and with a permanent smile. But for some, this interaction may seem superficial or fake, especially in places like restaurants or stores. Another point that can cause confusion is the directness of Americans in communication. They don't beat around the bush and say what they think without hesitation, which can be surprising to those accustomed to a more subtle communication style. And of course, the strong emphasis on individualism and competition can give the impression that they are selfish or insensitive. Okay, in 14th place, the United Kingdom is famous for its traditions, its monarchy, and of course the famous 5 o'clock tea, but not everything is as pretty as it seems. The British, despite being polite, are known for their sarcasm and sharp humor, which can sometimes be mistaken for rudeness. Also, their tendency to be reserved and maintain distance in public can give an impression of coldness and unapproachability. In big cities like London, the fast pace of life can make it seem like the English don't have time for good manners. For example, it's not uncommon to see people avoiding eye contact on public transport or ignoring strangers. This behavior might seem impolite, but it's actually a way of preserving personal space. Number 13, Australia. Australia is famous for its amazing nature and its relaxed lifestyle, but this same carefree attitude can make Australians seem a little too direct sometimes. Australian humor is unique, full of sarcasm and playful teasing, which can be surprising to those who are not used to this style of communication. Even the way they speak can sound a bit blunt to some. In Australia, slang and colloquial expressions are very common, and this can sound strange or even disrespectful to foreigners. If you add to that the fact that Australians are very direct, it can give the impression that they are rude, you know? But in reality, it's simply the Australian communication style, open and straightforward. Number 12, Japan is known for its politeness and respect for social rules, but to some travelers, these strict rules can make Japanese people seem cold or distant. Social interactions in Japan are very structured, with many unwritten rules that can be confusing to foreigners. For example, Japanese people usually avoid physical contact and public displays of emotion, which are considered signs of closeness and friendship in many other cultures. If you add the language barrier and the strict formality in certain situations, visitors might feel that Japanese people are inaccessible or unfriendly. But this isn't a sign of rudeness, it's a different way of showing respect. 11th place. Italy is known for its passion, delicious food, and intense displays of emotion. But all this passion can be misunderstood as rudeness by those who come from elsewhere. Italians are very expressive and don't hesitate to interrupt or speak loudly, which can seem pushy or rude to those who prefer a quieter communication style. In cities full of tourists like Rome or Venice, many notice a certain impatience towards visitors. Italians, especially in these regions, may seem impatient or irritated, but most of the time it's because they have to deal with a huge flow of tourists all year round. Imagine that. Also, their gesturing and emotional way of speaking can give an impression of aggression, even though they're really just Italian. In 10th place, Greece, a country with thousands of years of history and legendary hospitality. However, some Greek customs might seem unusual to travelers. Greeks are usually very direct and tend to speak very close to each other, which can be uncomfortable for those who aren't used to this closeness. Fun fact about Greece: this is where the middle finger gesture originated, a gesture that has lasted through the centuries and is considered extremely offensive in many cultures. And although this gesture isn't common in everyday life, their way of communicating, direct and open, can be misunderstood as rude, when in reality it's just a cultural characteristic. In 9th place, Poland. Poland has a complex history, and its people have been through difficult times. Because of this, Polish people tend to be very direct in their expressions. This frankness can be surprising to those who are not used to such open communication. Many visitors find Polish people to be quite direct. They say what they think and express their opinions openly, even if it's negative. But this honesty should not be confused with rudeness. In Poland, sincerity is an important value. even if this attitude may seem a bit blunt to foreigners. By adapting to this way of communicating, you will discover that Polish people are very open and friendly people who value deep relationships. Eighth place, Israel is known for its directness. To outsiders, this might seem a bit rude. Openness and honesty are highly valued in Israeli culture. For those used to a more diplomatic communication style, this can be a real culture shock. For example, in Israel, you might be corrected in the middle of the street, or someone might jump into a conversation to give their opinion. Many Israelis consider honesty a sign of respect, and they prefer to tell the truth, even if it's unpleasant. To outsiders, not used to this directness, it can seem rude. It might take them some time to get used to this communication style. In seventh place, we have Nigeria, the most populated country in Africa, with a vibrant and diverse culture. Although their communication style may seem aggressive to those who are not used to it, Nigerians tend to speak loudly and very directly, which can be intimidating or disrespectful to some. If we add to this the chaotic traffic and the hustle and bustle of large Nigerian cities, the feeling of rudeness can intensify. The absence of small gestures like letting someone pass or holding the door can seem impolite to visitors, but in reality it has more to do with the fast pace of life and the strong competition in the cities. Sarcasm is also very common, and it may not be well understood by those who are not familiar with Nigerian humor. In sixth place, we have Germany. In Germany, efficiency and order are very important. This is reflected in how they talk to each other. Germans are known for being direct, and they usually avoid saying things they don't mean or gossiping. To people who are used to a softer way of communicating, this could seem a little blunt. You won't hear a lot of over-the-top compliments or small talk in Germany. Conversations usually revolve around more serious topics and content. Also, Germans are extremely punctual and expect the same from others. If you're late for a meeting or break a social rule, they will likely let you know. To some, this might seem rude. However, this directness and respect for rules are important parts of German culture. In fifth place, Saudi Arabia, a country where culture is deeply rooted in religious and social traditions. For visitors, these traditions may seem strict, even inappropriate. For example, the strict separation of sexes in public places and the need to observe prayer times, during which life comes to a standstill, may seem strange to foreigners. Furthermore, the strict dress code and rules of behavior can be confusing for tourists, or even make them feel uncomfortable. However, it's important to understand that this behavior is not based on disrespect, but on a deep respect for the religious and social norms that govern life in Saudi Arabia. In fourth place, Russia, a country with a rich history and culture where formality and respect for authority are very important. Russians tend to be more reserved and don't usually smile at strangers, which might seem cold or distant. This is explained by cultural differences in expressing friendliness. Imagine greeting someone you know on the street. A slight nod is considered polite and respectful. Also, English is not as widely spoken in some parts of the country, which can cause difficulties and misunderstandings. This also contributes to the idea that Russians are unfriendly. However, those who manage to establish closer ties with Russians will discover that behind this seriousness lies a welcoming and warm people, like the warmth of an authentic Russian dacha. 3. China is a huge country with an ancient culture, but some of its customs and habits may seem extremely rude to foreigners. For example, the habit of spitting in public, which many visitors find repulsive, is common in some parts of China, especially in rural areas. Furthermore, the language barrier and unusual rules of behavior, such as cutting in line, can cause culture shock. The Chinese also have a very direct style of communication, which may seem rude, but in their cultural context, it is just a way of being efficient and getting to the point. In second place, India is a country of contrasts and complexities, and this is reflected in how foreigners perceive it. Big Indian cities can seem very intense, crowds of people, chaos, and an apparent lack of respect for personal space. Pushing on public transportation and loud conversations are common, which visitors often perceive as rude. Furthermore, the hygiene and local customs, such as spitting in the street or littering, can be surprising for many tourists. However, behind these differences lies a country where hospitality is a fundamental value, and those who can look beyond the surface often have a very enriching experience. And finally, we've reached the top spot. France, especially Paris, has a reputation for being one of the least friendly places for tourists. Parisians in particular are known for their impatience with foreigners, especially those who don't speak French. Trying to communicate in English without even attempting a few words in French can be interpreted as disrespectful. Additionally, the French tend to be very direct in their communication, which can seem rude to those accustomed to a softer, gentler tone. In France, service in restaurants or shops doesn't always come with a smile, which contrasts with the experience tourists might have in other countries, like the United States. However, it's important to remember that discretion and courtesy are important values in French culture. As we've seen, what is considered rude really depends on cultural norms and personal expectations. What might be offensive to one person might just be a different way of life for another. When we travel, it's important to be open-minded and ready to learn about local customs. This will help us avoid misunderstandings and appreciate the cultural richness of each country. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the 15 rudest countries in the world. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos about culture, travel, and much more. See you soon.